Silver, time to buy or bail. We've got Don Harrold with us. He's a smart guy, friend, and he's the host of the Day Trader Show. Hey, Don, how you doing?
Doing good, Jeff. How are you?
A man doing well. Tell me your thoughts on silver. It's been an explosive rally. It's been kind of fast money and maybe not as quite a long-term holder as they think, being long this entity. What are you thinking of silver here?
Well, I think that it was a great buy when I was buying it from 2000 to 2004. I think that was an amazingly smart move.
If you do say so yourself.
Well, I get some things right, so that was good. But I think here at 50, 44, 45, it's all about 50 to me. It's 1,000% move from the lows of a decade ago. Look at the NASDAQ chart, exactly the same chart, and they called the NASDAQ a bubble in 2000. Seems like a bubble to me now.
Walk me through that. You've got a chart of the Dow valued in silver since 1914. We saw kind of a parabolic rip, a NASDAQian rip, and we're seeing that sell-off now. What does that chart tell you in terms of silver being fairly valued, overvalued, or due for a tumble?
Well, let me say this. I think that anytime you're in a bubble, I think that a lot of the metrics get thrown out the window. So when I talk about charts, and a lot of the numbers I use, a lot of the silver bulls and silver bugs will say to me, it's different this time. This time it's completely different, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Yeah. So when I present this information, I do it with the caveat, this could be different this time. However, I don't think it is. For the history, for the last 100 years roughly, the Dow has been valued in ounces of silver at about 550 to 1 on average. Right now, I think we're 250, 260 to 1. And you can see by the chart, an enormous, just a cliff dive from what the Dow was valued just even a decade ago to where we are now.
Suggesting that silver was undervalued when you were buying it, and now we've seen that correction, so at the very least, we're sort of in the median of where silver should be valued. Right.
I mean, if you're looking at a time to buy, I mean, that chart would suggest at peaks on that chart you want to buy, and closer to valleys you want to sell. Now, in deference to the silver bulls, it is true that back in 1980 or so, the number got a lot closer to about 50 to 1.
Now, in terms of history lesson, I'll let Nesto jump in, but that was the Hunt brothers were actually taking physical delivery. They were a bunch of crazy oil guys in Texas. I think even they would refer to themselves as that. They were taking physical delivery of silver, trying to corner the market, flying it to Zurich. That ended horribly, and that stopped at about 50, which is your price target. It's been my price target. It seems a logical place.
Yeah. Well, let me say one thing about the manipulation of the Hunt brothers. A lot of the silver bulls and silver bugs now will say this time is different. This is not. They'll say this move is organic, completely organic. There's nothing manipulated about this. And yet those same silver bulls will look back to 2008 and the collapse and say that was manipulated. I mean, it seems to me the manipulation story is old and tired. You got to look at the charts and look historically at where we're at. And I just think that's not a compelling new buy right now.
One thing is for sure, Don, and that is that there are more investors than ever in silver. There's more ways to play silver, and it's also, poor man's gold like maybe never before. So maybe this time it is different, especially if we see in the post-death of bin Laden era some sort of a flight to quality and some turmoil where people are looking for real assets to own again. Maybe this is just a short-term buying opportunity. I know we're going to hear people say that.
Well, yeah, you're going to hear people say that, and what I would argue is that, first of all, I want to talk about Mackey for a second. Mackey's a retail guy, and Jeff, let me ask you this. If you can buy something at hundreds of online retailers, if you can buy it at thousands of brick-and-mortar retailers, if you go to eBay and there are more people selling it than people selling American Idol T-shirts, which is true, by the way. If you search for American Idol T-shirt, you'll find less American Idol T-shirts than 1-ounce silver rounds. How rare is that thing? How is it that thing is so rare? It's such a hard-to-find deal. And I just asked myself, from a retail perspective, Mackey, what do you think? Is that rare?
I would say it suggests a certain absence of scarcity that would drive the price up, Don. In other words, yeah, it is pretty rare. So you're saying unambiguously that silver is a bubble here and you'd sell it right now?
Well, what I'm saying is I've been selling it since 22 in very small increments. And people that follow me have watched me sell in 5 and 10% increments every 15 or 20% higher. I still own some. I will always own precious metals. But I'm not a new buyer at 50. It doesn't make any sense. The other chart that I sent y'all was the chart of silver versus inflation. And this is an interesting chart. because the silver bulls and the silver bugs will say that with all the money printing, this time it really is different. This time we're going to 150, 300. There are some people who believe, Jeff, and Matt as well, you'll be buying a house with a couple hundred ounces of silver just a year or so from now. The problem is the Fed has been jiggering inflation numbers for the last 100 years. So if you say, well, the inflation numbers are really tamped down now and they were more meaningful in the past, that is nonsense. They've always been rigged. Look at what silver is right now versus inflation. I'm using the average yearly price, not the highs. And you can see that right now it is off the charts versus what you'd expect versus inflation. I can't see any metric that says silver's a buy right now except those things which are unquantifiable. And if I can't quantify it, I can't trade it.
What more do we need to say? Don Harrold, thank you very much. Appreciate it. A good friend of the program here, and we're going to personally ask him to bring back the farmer pants, a retro reintroduction there. Don Harrold, host of the Day Trade Show.
Thanks, guys.